What if I told you the very first person in the Bible to give God a name wasn't a prophet or a king, or even a hero in the eyes of history? It was a woman enslaved, pregnant, running alone through the unforgiving desert, convinced no one saw her pain. And the name she spoke, it wasn't just another title for God. It was a secret, a revelation, about how God sees you in the moments when the world has turned its back. We skim past Hagar's story, don't we? Most of us. She's the outsider, the supporting character to Abraham and Sarah's legendary faith. But her cry in the wilderness unlocked something no patriarch or priest had ever dared. In her desperation, Hagar met the God who sees her, and she called him ROI. That moment, buried in a few lines of Genesis, is a window into the radical compassion at the very heart of the divine. It's a truth that shifts the foundations, not just of Abraham's story, but of our own. Because if God sees Hagar, the invisible, the cast-off, then what does that mean for the rest of us? So today, we're not just retelling a dusty episode from ancient history. We're following Hagar into the desert, to the spring where a runaway slave girl dared to name the Holy One. And what happened there still echoes, through covenants, through prophets, all the way to the cry of Jesus himself. This is the story of the God who sees, the story of ROI. And whether you realize it or not, it's your story too. Long before the sun rises over the hills of Canaan, a hush falls across the ancient land. There are rumors in the tents, quiet voices over dying fires, whispering of a promise, a son, a nation, descendants as countless as the stars. But the promise, for now, is unfulfilled. Sarai, once celebrated for her beauty and wisdom, is marked by barrenness. In the ancient Near East, that wasn't just a private sorrow. It was public shame. Barrenness meant whispers, suspicion, the ache of being less, in a culture where legacy was everything. Now, picture Abraham's camp. Tents spread across the rocky hills, goats and camels clustered around dusty wells. It's here we meet Hagar. She's Egyptian, likely a teenager, taken as a slave when Pharaoh gave gifts to Abram and Sarai during their sojourn in Egypt. For Hagar, there is no promise, no legacy. Her body, her future, even her name, all owned by others. But Sarai is desperate. She's heard the promise but seen no miracle, so she takes matters into her own hands. "Go, sleep with my slave," she tells Abram. "Perhaps I can build a family through her." These are not words of hope. They're words of heartbreak, of a woman trying to escape her shame by using another's body. Abram listens. Hagar becomes pregnant. For a brief, shining moment, she holds what Sarai cannot: new life. But now the tables turn. Hagar's status shifts, if only a little. The ancient texts say, when she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Maybe it's not contempt. Maybe it's the first taste of dignity. Maybe it's the hope that she, just once, might be more than a possession. But Sarai's jealousy flares. Abram, caught between them, does nothing to defend Hagar. "Your slave is in your hands," he tells Sarai. "Do with her whatever you think best." And Sarai mistreats Hagar so harshly the girl runs away, out into the wilderness, into the land called Shur. Trace her path on the map, from Hebron, past the borderlands, through wasteland where only the desperate go. Barrenness equals social shame in 2000 BC. The text could read in bold. Ancient art shows Egyptian slaves bowed beneath loads, faces hidden, forgotten by history, nameless in every generation. But it's here, at the edge of survival, that something extraordinary happens. At a spring in the desert, the angel of the Lord finds her. Notice the word, finds. Not meets, not stumbles upon. He seeks her. In a world that never called her by name, the voice calls out, "Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?" Pause here. God does not ask, "Why did you run?" Not, "What have you done?" but "Where have you come from?" It's a question about identity, about pain, about the story behind the scars. He listens, not to her status, but to her soul. Hagar answers honestly. I'm running away from my mistress Sarai. And then, in language that's part promise, part mystery, the angel says, Go back to your mistress and submit to her. That sounds harsh to our ears, but keep listening. He's not sending her back empty-handed. He gives her a promise. I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. The same words once spoken to Abraham, now spoken to an enslaved woman. But there's more. You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. Ishmael, God hears. Every time she calls her son's name, she'll remember, God listened. And here comes the most astonishing moment. Hagar, the foreign slave, dares to name the living God. You are the God who sees me, she says. I have now seen the one who sees me. The Hebrew is ROI, the God who sees. And the well where she met him is called Bir Lahai Roi, the well of the living one who sees me. This is the only place in all of Scripture where a human gives God a name. And it's a name born in pain, in flight, in abandonment. Imagine her face, her voice trembling with awe as she realizes, in the place where no one saw me, God saw me. Where my cries were swallowed by the wind, God listened. Where I was invisible to the world, I was known to the Almighty. Can you feel the shift? The first person to name God is not a king, not a priest, not a hero. It's Hagar, the runaway, the rejected, the one whose story should have ended in the desert. What does that tell us about God's heart for the overlooked? What if the ones we see as invisible are, in fact, the ones God sees most clearly? As Hagar returns to Abraham's tents, her son is born. Ishmael, God hears. But her story doesn't end there. Years pass. Isaac, the child of promise, is born to Sarah. And once again, jealousy, fear, and insecurity swirl through the family. Sarah demands that Hagar and Ishmael be cast out, sent away into the wilderness with only a skin of water and a little bread. When the water is gone, Hagar lays her boy under a bush and walks away, unable to watch him die. She lifts her voice and weeps. But again, God hears. The angel calls from heaven. What troubles you, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying. Lift him up, take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. God opens her eyes, and she sees a well of water, life in the desert. Ishmael survives, grows, becomes the ancestor of many. And Hagar's story, once so small, echoes forward. Her encounter with El Roi is not just a moment in the past, it's a prophecy. Because generations later, another outcast woman will sit by a well, and a man, weary from the journey, will ask her for a drink. He'll tell her everything she's ever done. He'll see her shame, her wounds, her hopes, and she'll run to her village crying, Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? Jesus, the ultimate God who sees, the fulfillment of Hagar's revelation. And as he walks among the poor, the broken, the invisible, he says, Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. El Roi becomes Emmanuel, God with us. The God who sees is the God who walks beside us, who weeps with us, who calls us by name in our wilderness. Let this sink in. Hagar wasn't just seen. She was given a promise. The slave woman named God, and he let her. That's not just a comfort, it's a revolution. When you feel invisible, in your pain, your loneliness, your failure, El Roi is not watching from afar. He is at the well, in your desert, whispering your name. So, what about you? When has God felt near in your wilderness? Have you ever had an El Roi moment, a time when you realized you were seen, even in your darkest place? Share your story below. We read every comment, every cry. You are not invisible. If this journey revealed something new about God's heart, we invite you to join our Bible Explorer family. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and come with us for more untold stories. Want to go deeper? Next, dive into God's names with our Yahweh Yireh breakdown. Find the link and thumbnail on the screen. And if you want to support these deep dives, you can buy us a coffee on Patreon or grab the ROI study guide linked below. In every desert, in every heartbreak, in every lonely place, remember Hagar's story. The God who sees is still here, and he sees you. Long before the ink dried on the scrolls of Genesis, long before anyone heard the name Israel, there was a lonely spring in the desert, a stretch of wild, windswept wilderness where it seemed only the wind bore witness to human pain. It was here that Hagar's footprints marked the sand, each step heavy with the weight of rejection, fear, and a life she had never chosen. Imagine her, alone, carrying more than just the weight of her unborn child. She carries the scorn of Sarai, the indifference of Abram, the silent verdict of a society that saw her as less than human. For most of us, the story might have ended right there, in the desert. But for Hagar, the story turns. Not because she found her way out, but because someone found her. This is where the heart of the narrative beats. The text says, "The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert." That word, found, is not a passing detail. It's the pulse of the whole story. In the Hebrew, it's the language of pursuit. God didn't wait for Hagar to come back. He didn't demand she climb her way out of the mess. He sought her, on purpose, in the wilderness. And when he speaks, his words are unlike anything Hagar has ever heard. He calls her by name. "Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?" There is no accusation in his tone, no echo of Sarai's jealousy or Abram's passivity. Instead, there is a question that sees right through her. Where have you come from? He already knows, yet he asks, inviting her to speak her truth aloud, to be more than her pain, more than her status. Think about it. This is the first recorded conversation between God and a woman in the wilderness. No burning bush, no thunder, just a gentle voice, asking the question every outcast longs to hear. Tell me your story. I see you. I want to know you. Hagar does not hide or make excuses. She speaks her reality. I'm running away from my mistress Sarai. How many of us have whispered those words in our own way? I'm running. I'm hurt. I'm lost. Then the angel's message changes everything. Go back to your mistress and submit to her. On the surface, it sounds like defeat, but what follows is pure grace. I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. This is the language of promise. The same promise God gave Abraham is now given to Hagar. The invisible woman is given the future of nations. But there is more. The angel says, "You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery." Ishmael. Every time she calls her child, she will remember. God hears. Her suffering is not forgotten. Her tears are not lost in the sand. Now, let's pause and let this reality settle in. Hagar stands in the shimmering heat, clutching a future she never thought she'd have. She has not been rescued from slavery, not yet. She has not been delivered to some fairy tale ending, but she has been seen. She has been heard. She has been known. And in that knowing, she gives God a name. "You are ROI," she says, "the God who sees me. I have now seen the one who sees me." In a world where names meant everything, Hagar dares to do what no one else has done. She gives a name to the divine. Not just a title, but a testimony. Here, in my lowest place, I met the God who notices, the God who does not turn away. Let's let the Hebrew speak for a moment. El-Roi, El-Roi. El, meaning God, Roi, from the root to see, to look upon, to perceive. This is not the distant gaze of a judge. This is the searching, loving, attentive vision of a father, a redeemer, a friend. The spring where Hagar met God is named Bir Lahai Roi, Gas Sase, the well of the living one who sees me. It stands as a silent witness generation after generation to every soul who wonders if anyone cares. The text lingers on this, as if to say, don't miss it. Don't let the power of this moment slip by. You see, this isn't just a story about Hagar. It's about every person who has felt unseen, by family, by friends, by the world. It's about the universal ache to be known, and the universal fear that no one ever will. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is first called El Roi by a woman who was, in every way, on the margins. This isn't just radical compassion, it's revolutionary theology. And the story moves forward. Hagar returns, stronger, changed, carrying not just a child, but a promise. Ishmael is born. Years pass. For a time, there is peace. But new tensions arise as Sarah, against all odds, gives birth to Isaac. The household erupts with rivalry. Sarah, fearing for her son's inheritance, demands that Hagar and Ishmael be sent away once again. Abraham, torn and troubled, gives in. Hagar is handed a skin of water and some bread, and pushed out into the wilderness. The old fear returns. The wilderness is relentless, the water soon gone. Hagar cannot bear to watch her child die, so she leaves him under a bush and walks away, weeping. I cannot watch the boy die. Her cry is ancient and raw, the voice of every mother, every parent, every human who has reached the end of hope. And yet, once more, the God who sees, hears. God heard the boy crying, the text says, echoing Ishmael's very name. And the angel of God calls to Hagar from heaven. What troubles you, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. And then, miracle of miracles, God opens her eyes and she sees a well of water. Life in the midst of death. The story is almost a mirror. Hagar, lost in the wilderness. God, seeking, finding, seeing. Both times when all hope seems lost, God appears, not as a distant observer, but as El Roi, the one who sees and the one who hears. Hagar's exile becomes a stage for God's relentless compassion. Let's step back and ask, why is this story buried here in the middle of Genesis? What is it doing in the midst of patriarchs and covenants and miracles? The answer is simple and profound. The heart of the gospel beats in Hagar's story. Before Israel, before the law, before the prophets, God's mercy runs out ahead, into the wilderness, to the outcast, to the forgotten. This isn't just theology, it's the shape of salvation, because centuries later another outcast, a Samaritan woman scorned by her village, will meet Jesus at another well. He will see her, not just her shame or her reputation, but her heart. He will offer her living water, a new beginning. He told me everything I ever did, she will say. Could this be the Messiah? Jesus, the living water, is the ultimate El Roi. He is the one who sees, who notices, who cares. The story of Hagar is woven into the very DNA of the gospel, into the moment when Jesus says, "Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me." The God who sees becomes the God who walks with us. Emmanuel. Pause here. Let this truth speak to you, wherever you are. Maybe you feel overlooked, invisible, abandoned. Maybe your wilderness is not a desert, but a hospital room, an empty apartment, a silent struggle no one else can see. The same God who met Hagar at the spring meets you here, now. He calls you by name. He asks, "Where have you come from? Where are you going?" Not to judge, but to draw you into his promise. Hagar's story ends not with defeat, but with hope. Ishmael grows up. He becomes an archer, living in the desert. His mother finds him a wife from Egypt. The promise lives on. And every time someone drew water from Bir Lahai Roi, they remembered. A slave woman once met God here. She was seen. She was heard. And so are you. So, friend, as we come to the well today, what do you carry? What pain? What longing? What hope? El Roi is not far off. He is near. He sees. He knows. And he calls you by name. The ripples of Hagar's story do not end with her. Her encounter in the wilderness sets off echoes that move quietly, relentlessly through the whole tapestry of Scripture. At first glance, her life might seem like a footnote, just a brief mention, an aside between the weighty promises given to Abraham. But if you trace the thread, you find it weaving through every story where someone is overlooked, misunderstood, pushed aside. Hagar's cry becomes the secret heartbeat of the whole biblical narrative. A God who notices, a God who stoops, a God who answers in the place of despair. Let's step into that for a moment. Think about how the ancient world worked. Power was everything. Lineage was destiny. And the voices of the powerless faded into silence. Women like Hagar, slaves, foreigners, the other, were rarely remembered, let alone given a voice. Yet Genesis gives her not just a name, but a song. The name she gives God is more than a label. It's a revolutionary claim. I have seen the one who sees me. Why does this matter so much? Because, in a world addicted to hierarchies, Hagar's story is a crack in the system. It's a radical announcement. The living God is not the possession of the powerful. He's not only the God of Abraham, the God of promises and covenants, but the God of the margins, the God of the outcast, the God who listens to the ones no one else will hear. When Hagar names him ROI, she does what no patriarch dared. She claims her own encounter, her own place in the sacred story, and God affirms her. He doesn't correct her or push her away. He lets her speak, lets her see, lets her name him. All throughout the scriptures, echoes of Hagar's encounter return. Each time a person is seen, not as a problem, but as a person. There's Ruth, the Moabite outsider grafted into the lineage of the Messiah. There's David, the forgotten shepherd boy chosen over his impressive brothers. There's the leper who cries out, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." And Jesus reaches out his hand, not repulsed, but moved with compassion. But perhaps nowhere does Hagar's legacy shine more brightly than in the life and ministry of Jesus. Again and again, Jesus stops for the ones everyone else ignores. The bleeding woman who dares to touch his cloak in the crowd, the tax collector hiding in a tree, the children whom even his disciples wanted to send away. He sees, he knows, he calls them by name. And that well in the desert? It's almost as if every story of water in the Bible, from Moses striking the rock to Elijah at the brook, from the waters of baptism to the living streams of revelation, is haunted by the memory of Bir Lahai Roi, the place where the living one sees and is seen, the place where shame is turned into encounter and pain into promise. Let's turn our gaze to one of the most beautiful parallels in the Gospels, the woman at the well in John 4. She, too, is an outsider. She comes to the well alone at noon, avoiding the stares and the gossip. Jesus is waiting, weary from his journey, but ready. He asks her for a drink, breaking all social rules. Jews don't talk to Samaritans, men don't talk to women in public, rabbis don't share vessels with the unclean. Yet, here he is, starting the conversation. They talk. He reveals he knows her story, her pain, her broken relationships, the secrets she thought were buried. But instead of shame, there is understanding. Instead of condemnation, there is hope. If you knew the gift of God, he tells her, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Like Hagar, she meets the God who sees her, sees all of her, and loves her still. Her reaction: she runs back to her village transformed. Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? In that moment, the outcast becomes the evangelist. The overlooked becomes the messenger. The well of living water springs up in the most unlikely place. This theme, the God who sees, becomes central to Jesus' message. In Matthew 25, he tells his followers, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." The hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the naked, the sick, the prisoner, these are the ones he identifies with. He says, in essence, if you want to find me, don't look to the places of power. Look to the margins. Look for the invisible. That's where I am. All of this points back to Hagar's well, to that lonely place where an enslaved woman discovered she was known and loved. The heart of the gospel is not that we climb up to God, but that he comes down to us, especially when we have nothing left, when our story seems too small to matter. The God of Abraham is also the God of Hagar. The God of covenants is also the God of outcasts. And so, the question becomes, what do we do with this? How does Hagar's encounter at Bir Lahai Roi reshape our lives today? First, it challenges our vision. Who do we see? Who do we overlook? Are there people in our families, our workplaces, our communities who feel invisible, who go unnamed, unnoticed, uninvited? The story of Hagar is a gentle but urgent call to open our eyes, to look for the hidden suffering around us, to remember that every person carries a name, a story, a pain only God may see. Second, it invites us to be honest about our own wilderness moments. All of us, at some point, walk into deserts we never chose. Maybe it's grief, or betrayal, or loneliness, or the ache of dreams deferred. In those moments, it can feel like no one understands, no one cares. Hagar's testimony reminds us, even here, especially here, the Living One sees us. He hears our cries. He meets us at the well with a promise, not always to rescue us instantly, but to walk with us, to give us a future, to name us beloved. Third, it turns our faith upside down. We're taught to look for God in temples and cathedrals, in perfect prayers and shining successes. But the God of Hagar is found in the places we least expect, in the cry for help, in the wilderness, in the faces of those who've been cast aside. He is the God who seeks, who asks, who listens. And if he can meet Hagar, he can meet you, and he can send you to meet others in their own deserts. Let's not miss the aha moment here. Hagar was not just seen. She was trusted with a promise, trusted with the future. The slave woman named God, and he let her. What kind of God allows himself to be named by the lowly? What kind of love is this that stoops so low and yet lifts us up? This is the heart of the gospel. This is the invitation for every invisible soul. And now, let's bring it closer. When was the last time you felt invisible? Maybe it was this morning, scrolling through messages no one answered, walking into a room where no one met your eyes. Maybe you've been carrying burdens no one else notices, silent heartbreaks, dreams that have faded quietly into the background. Hagar's story isn't just a comfort, it's a call. The God who sees is not a distant observer. He's here, at the well, in your desert, whispering your name. So, as we linger at the edge of the story, let your own heart ask, what is your Elroy moment? When did you realize, maybe even for a flicker, that you were seen? Not just by the people around you, but by the living God who notices the unseen. If you're still waiting for that moment, hold on. The God of Hagar still walks the deserts. He still finds the lost. He still brings water to the weary. And maybe you're realizing right now how radical this is, that the heart of the universe beats for the outcast, the unseen, the one whose story never made the history books. Hagar's cry in the desert is not just ancient history, it's a living challenge. For every time you've wondered, does anyone know? Does anyone care? The God of Hagar, Elroy, answers, yes, I see you. I know your pain. I am with you. But this story is not just about personal comfort. It's about transformation. It's about learning to see ourselves and others through the eyes of the God who notices the overlooked. What does it look like to let this story shape your life? It looks like pausing before you judge the person who seems invisible, the cashier behind the counter, the neighbor whose name you keep forgetting, the refugee, the single parent, the lonely student, the elder left behind. It looks like letting your curiosity be stronger than your assumptions, asking not just what's wrong with them, but where have they come from? Where are they going? What's their story? It looks like stepping into the wilderness with others, becoming, in some small way, a reflection of Elroy. When you listen, when you speak a kind word, when you simply see someone who feels unseen, you become a well in their desert, a sign that God's love still flows in hidden places. The world is thirsty for this kind of sight, this radical, patient attention. We are all Hagar, at one time or another, and we are all called to be bearers of hope to the Hagars around us. There's a holy mystery at work here. In Genesis, after Hagar names God, she says, I have now seen the one who sees me. The order matters. To truly see God, to truly know Him, not as a distant power but as the living one, You first have to experience being seen, not for what you can offer or for the roles you play, but for who you truly are in all your mess and vulnerability. This is the truth that changes everything. The God of Scripture is not only mighty, not only holy, but deeply personal. He enters our pain. He walks into our exile. He sits beside the well, waits in our wilderness, and calls us by name. And then, He invites us to do the same for others. When you look at the big story of the Bible, at Abraham, Moses, Ruth, David, Mary, Peter, you see a pattern. God keeps finding people in the middle of nowhere, at the end of themselves, with nothing left to prove. And it's in those moments, those deserts, that His love is most clear. You are the God who sees me. That's not just Hagar's confession. It's the confession of every saint, every struggler, every person who's ever wondered if they matter. This is why, even centuries after Hagar, Jesus' words ring out with such power. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. The gospel turns the world upside down. What's forgotten is remembered, what's lost is found, what's unseen is cherished. In every age, the God who sees becomes the hope of those who feel alone. So, let yourself feel the weight of this. The living God does not bypass the wilderness. He does not ignore the exile. He walks right into it. When you're abandoned, He is there. When you're afraid, He is near. When you are just holding on, He brings the water, the promise, the future you could never have imagined. That's the promise Hagar received. That's the promise echoed in the life of Jesus, the God who eats with sinners, who welcomes the outsider, who tells stories about shepherds leaving the 99 to find the one, about fathers running to embrace prodigals, about banquets thrown for people who never got invited anywhere else. And this is why the story matters for you right now. Whatever desert you're in, however invisible you feel, you are seen. Not with the cold, clinical gaze of a spectator, but with the fierce, tender eyes of a God who knows every step you've taken, who knows every scar, every heartbreak, every hope you've barely dared to name. ROI, the God who sees, is not a distant idea. He is the very heartbeat of your story. So, as you go about your life, carry Hagar's revelation with you. Let it color the way you see others and the way you see yourself. When you feel invisible, remember, God's vision is not limited by status, by history, by the opinions of others. He sees the real you, the beloved, the chosen, the one worth naming. If you're longing for an ROI moment, don't give up hope. Sometimes it comes in a flash, sometimes in a whisper. Sometimes it's the kindness of a stranger, the comfort of a friend, the sudden awareness that you are not alone. Sometimes it's the quiet conviction that your pain matters, that your story is known, that your tears are gathered by the living one. Let's remember, too, that being seen is the beginning of transformation. When Hagar returned from the wilderness, she returned changed. She was still a servant. Her circumstances hadn't fully shifted, but her spirit had. She carried a secret the powerful didn't know, a secret that even the chosen family needed to learn. She was the first, but not the last, to discover that God's love is for the least, the lost, and the lonely. You, yes, you are seen. You are heard. And your story, no matter how hidden or humble, is woven into the great tapestry of God's compassion. The well of Bir Lahai Roy still flows. The God who sees still calls, still comforts, still gives water to the weary. So, as this story closes, let's linger at the well together. Take a moment to breathe, to remember, to believe, even if it's just for a heartbeat, that you are not invisible, and neither is anyone else. Let Hagar's cry become your own. I have seen the one who sees me, and let it change the way you walk through the world. If this story has spoken to you, we want to hear your voice. When has God felt near in your wilderness? When have you had an ROI moment? A time when you realized you were seen in your struggle? Share your story below in the comments. We read every one. Because in this community, no one is invisible. And if this journey into the desert revealed something new about God's heart, Join us. Become part of the Bible Explorer family. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and step into more untold stories with us. Ready to go deeper? Click for our Yahweh Yireh breakdown next. Discover the God who provides just as He sees. And if these deep dives have blessed you, consider supporting our ministry. You can buy us a coffee on Patreon, or check out our ROI study guide with reflection prompts, maps, and more. Links are below. Together, we keep the well flowing. Remember, in every heartbreak, in every desert, the God who sees is near. He sees Hagar. He sees you. He always has, and He always will.